Today's episode, we talk about coaching the running back, and we'll focus even a little bit on some different read schemes and how to read different runs. And joining us to discuss that, former NFL coach, former college coach, now doing some great things in coaching coaches, David Walker. Coach, it's great to have you here.
Oh, it's great to be here. Appreciate letting me join the episode.
Coach, we definitely want to get into some of the stuff that you're doing to help running backs coaches right now and help them, better serve their players. Before we do that, though, I want to share a little bit about your background in the game and, starting back with, for you, I know it was a great career at Syracuse, had a little bit of an opportunity in the NFL and then you got into coaching. But, before you became a coach, what was it that made you think you might want to continue in football as a football coach when your playing days were over?
Well, I was influenced by a lot of great men, a lot of great coaches as I was growing up, whether it was youth football into high school and then through college. So I kind of knew when I got to college and experienced some of the coaching that I had there that I'd like to be able to give back. So my thought always was I'm going to be an educator, I'm going to be a teacher and a coach. And that way I can work with the normal students and I can work with the athletes. So, that's what my mindset was as a young adult. And, like life happens and different things go, you try to continue to play. It didn't work out. And was able to get my first job, coaching job, working with a former high school legend, Walt Frazier, down at Carroll City High School in 1994. And I learned in 1 year from Walt Frazier so many different things about coaching and dealing with people and leadership and, the list goes on. And I've just been fortunate from there to just kind of run with it, have some opportunities present themselves to me, take advantage of them. And, now I look back, 25 to 30 years later and say, it was a pretty good run. Like I said, I've had an opportunity to work with some really, really good offensive minds and some really, really good defensive minds. And it's kind of shaped who I am as a coach and how I look at things and, and how I try to present and teach information to young men.
We talk about how it's shaped you as a coach. Coach, tell us a little bit about your philosophy of coaching and what you really believe makes a successful coach.
I would think, the one thing that comes to mind is just the ability to communicate, number one, and that's to receive communication and to be able to communicate with your players and with your fellow coaches. You've got to be able to address kids differently because, kid A in the room may hear it differently than kid B in the room. And so you have to have a lot of different ways you communicate the same thing to kids to get them to understand what you're trying to coach or what you're trying to teach. The other thing that I think is true about the coaching profession is it's not fair. And players, you have to let the players know that, all the things that we do aren't fair. One guy might get a little bit more leniency. One guy might be a little bit stricter too. I'll have my different reasons why. Here would be a good example. When you're a college coach, you have two players. One player is a B+ student, and one player is a C- student. And if my B+ student missed a class, I'm not going to lose sleep over it. If my C- student missed a class, we're probably going to be doing some extra stuff in the morning in terms of conditioning or whatnot. So, coach, that's not fair. I said, you know what, you're right. It's not fair, but it is what it is. And you deal with each situation the way it comes. So I think those two things really for me is the ability to communicate and to understand that in this profession, it's not fair. There's going to be things that happen to players. There's going to be there's going to be injuries that happen to your best, hardest working player. Well, that's not fair. Well, you're right. It's not, but it happened. Or, the bounce of the ball is not going to go your way on a Friday night or a Saturday afternoon or whatever it may be. So once I realized those two things and kind of, let those be kind of part of my fiber and how I do things and how I communicate and how I look at things, that's made my life as a coach a lot easier.
Coach, moving on, you've moved away from the game now, but your work continues, and you're just coaching coaches right now. Talk to us a little bit about what you've developed and the mission of what you're doing right now.
Yeah, so, I made the decision a couple years ago after the 2018 season to step away from coaching. I was working with the Detroit Lions at the time, and I just needed to be more present in my family's life, their day-to-day lives. And so I made that decision. And what I started and developed over some time here is putting together basically a platform where coaches can go and try to grow in the profession. So I was, on a Zoom call with some high school coaches, and over, it's the beginning of March, so it's right at the beginning of the pandemic. And my youngest son is home from college, and he's kind of semi-listening into the Zoom call that I'm on with some of these high school coaches, and he's semi-paying attention to whatever he was watching on TV or whatnot. And when we finished the Zoom call, he says, "You've got something there." And I was like, "What do you mean?" He says, "You've got these coaches, and you're talking and you're giving your expertise to these guys. And I said, you've got a business opportunity here." And I was like, "Well, I'm just, they're my guys, and I'm just trying to help them out a little bit." So he hemmed and hawed all over the weekend and basically started putting together a website for me. And that's how 3rd and 3 started and originated, was just my son, really, to be honest with you, overhearing me on a call and then him kind of running with it and forcing me to, I've been fortunate in this profession. He's forced me to kind of use my gift and share it with other coaches. So we've developed an online platform. We do clinics and have videos on all positions, all different topics. Examples would be, I do a lot of stuff running back specific, but we also will have quarterback coaches come on and present information, defensive line coaches, linebacker coaches, whatnot. So every position we cover, special teams. And it's a way to network. It's a way to grow in the profession. And it's a way to practice coaching, for guys, So what we're trying to get done with 3rd and 3 is we're trying to be the most comprehensive online learning platform that's out there. And so far, I think we've got a nice little following. And I think the guys that have been on the calls and part of the clinics would all say they've grown from their experience.
I think what's unique with this, coach, is the live aspect of this. And, that certainly works for some people, and so you're going to get those guys in for the live clinics. But what I like about what you're doing is you've also made this available for those guys who can't attend. And I know one of the things right now, the work you've done, I was able to look at it the other day, was you put your course, Developing the Complete Running Back, on CoachTube, and I thought it was a very unique look at it. Now, I would say it's not going through and the basics of things, but it's showing, you show a drill and then you show that happen in the game, and you move through it pretty quickly. So you cover a number of things, but that whole idea of developing that every down back, and you shared that with the whole coaching community on CoachTube.
Yeah, I think, and there's levels too. Like you said, I kind of go through it quickly. It's really, I would say, not a basic level tape. It's more of an advanced or master's level tape. You've got to have some sort of background understanding of the position. And then once you go through that, I think it really highlights and enlightens you on a lot of different things. There's so much more than just drills that you can do with the running back position. Drills are nice. Everybody's going to have their set of drills that they work, but it's teaching a back how to play the position, teaching him what to look at while he's out on the field, teaching him all the skills that he's going to need to be successful. Because I look at the running back position, there's really 4 components of it. There's running the football, There's blocking for the football, whether that's run or pass. There's receiving the football, and then there's protecting the football. And giving them a blueprint to handle those four things and have your drill work and your coaching points and your teaching methods that are focused on those things. That's part of how you develop that position, and you get guys to play at a high level at that position.
Coach, I love the one thing you talked about in that course was the accountability of the running back. That if the offensive line is blocking it up for 4, he owes them more than 4, right? That guy is responsible and should be good enough, trained up enough, developed enough that whatever they're giving him, he's able to do more with it.
That's exactly right. To me, it's I look at it this way: it's the running back's job to make the offensive line right, not the other way around. I think other people would disagree with that statement, but that's the mindset that you have to have when you coach that position and when you play that position. And like you said, if we're doing a good job and all you can consistently do is get the ball where the line or the receivers blocked you to get, then you haven't done anything on your own. And at that position, you got to have guys that can create their own yards. And so that's one thing I preach when I talk to guys. It's your production, but that production sometimes could be skewed. Are you productive and you're creating your own yards and you're causing missed tackles? Well, then you're going to keep playing. If you're productive in terms of maybe yards per carry, but you haven't caused any missed tackles and you haven't created your own yards, those are kind of misleading stats to me. So you got to be able to dive in and see what a guy is actually doing more than just the numbers.
Coach, getting into another area of this, and I said it was kind of one of the things we would focus on today, reading different schemes. And I had mentioned to you in particular when I was learning the zone running game, inside and outside zone, I had asked this particular coach, what's the best for training the back in this? He's like, well, he can't do it. Go to the next one. And, that didn't sit well with me. And I know it was kind of tongue in cheek for him in the way he talked about it. But the truth is, these guys a lot of times, and it's kind of shifted since that was some time ago when there was all those tailback focused offenses. Now the quarterback is just as dynamic and usually have two major weapons back there, but he's still going to get those 20 touches a game. We're still giving him the ball quite a bit. His training is critical to the success of the team. That, yes, we need him to be an athlete. We need him to have all those tangible physical skills that are developed along the way. But there is the technical aspect that relates directly to the schemes. For you, as you look at that, what's the responsibility of the coach in training that elite athlete up?
Yep. I'll start off this way. I think you need to be able to define through the running back's eyes what a zone scheme is, what a gap scheme is, what a lead scheme is, and what a pin and pull scheme is. And once again, I think you got to look at it through the running back's eyes, not necessarily the offensive line coach's eyes. And then once you do that, so I'll give you an example of what I mean. So when I'm coaching up a zone scheme means to me that we have front side linemen accountable for the play side linebacker position. So I don't care what run we're talking about. If we've got a front side lineman accountable for the play side linebacker position, that's going to fall into the zone world for me. Take it a step further and say, okay, now we've got a backside lineman responsible for the play side linebacker. To me, that's a gap scheme because we're going to block back on the front side. We're going to take a puller from the backside of the play. If you just think of power for a second, you're going to take a puller from the backside and you're going to put him on the front side linebacker position. So to me, that's a different scheme. That falls into the gap world for me. When we start talking lead schemes, then we're going to take a lead blocker, whether it's the fullback, on isolation, whether it's the tight end on lead draw, but we're going to have a lead blocker responsible. When I say a lead blocker, a tight end and or fullback responsible for that play side linebacker position. And then when we start talking pin and pulls, we're going to be blocking down on the outside, and we're going to pull front side linemen to the perimeter to try to get the ball around the edge. So to me, each scheme is very different. And once the players are able to understand what the scheme is, then we build in the teaching of what your rules are and what your reads are based on the scheme. So I really think it's important you coach up scheme specific, not play specific, when you start talking running backs and what their reads are.
And you and I had talked about this before we got going. Your favorite play to coach, I know you like the gap schemes because they're downhill. They're an attitude run. Coach, talk to us a little bit about the read that you teach and take us through what you want that guy to see as you're running your gap schemes.
Yep. So once again, and you hit it on the head. The gap scheme runs are attitude plays. I think they're important to an offense to set the tone from a physicality standpoint. It allows you to create a double team at the point of attack, and allows you to bring a puller from the backside. So there's two different ways I would coach this scheme up based on if I'm coaching let's say a less experienced back, and then if I'm coaching a more experienced back. So there's really two ways to coach this play. The first way, or the least experienced guy, would really be coached off hugging the down block on the front side. So if we've got a 3 technique in the defense and we're working a deuce block with the guard and tackle, well, we're cutting the defense off when we have the outside edge of the deuce block, which would be the tackle, as he blocks down on the 3 technique and works up to the backside backer. So that's where we're trying to divide the defense. So I've got to be on the front side of that divide as tight as I can be. So I talk about hugging the down block, and it's really hugging the down block of the combination. So if it's a 3 technique, it would be the tackle's down block. If it's a 5 technique, and let's say we're running 2-back power to under defense, and we've got the tight end tackle working the trade block on the 5 technique to the backside linebacker, then it would eventually be hugging that tight end's down block. So I'm always going to put the ball on the outside of the wall we're creating. And then as I work through, I'm going to find my puller, and I'm going to read his hat at the second level. I'm a big guy in terms of reading the helmet of your blocker. So if the helmet of my blocker gets on the right side, that's where my escape is. If the helmet of my blocker gets on the left side of the defender, that's where my escape is. So when I say read the helmet or the hat of the puller, that's what I mean. So, entry level, inexperienced running back, we're working tight downhill through our landmark, whether we're telling them the landmark is the inside hip of the guard, whether we're telling them the landmark is the A gap, whether we're telling them the landmark is the butt of the guard. That's irrelevant. But as I work downhill through that landmark, I'm looking to get on the outside edge of the combination block. And once I get on the outside edge of the combination block, I'm picking up my puller, and I'm going to read his block at the second level. So that would be the let's call it level 101 coaching that I would give a back on gap schemes. Now, when you got a guy that really knows how to run a gap scheme, and you can expand his mind a little bit, then you start bringing in the backside linebacker as part of the read. So now when you have an experienced guy, what I would do is I would have him start his eyes on the backside linebacker or the linebacker that the combination is going to. So if we're deucing to the will, then my eyes are going to start on the will. If we're training to the will, they're going to start on the will. And I'm just going to play the game. 8 times out of 10, 9 times out of 10, that backside linebacker stays behind the combination block. But every once in a while, that backside linebacker reads the light hand of the guard in front of him. He knows the guard's about to pull. He knows what's coming, and then now he tries to beat the combination block over top of their block. So when we have that situation, if I got my eyes on that backside linebacker and he tries to, what I term fast flow or get over top of the combination block, then that's where the ball comes inside the combination block. And we take advantage of not letting that linebacker be right. So the whole key is to not let the backside linebacker be right on a gap scheme run when we get to the advanced level. And at that point, we get our eyes started on him. He stays backside. Then my eyes, once again, hug the outside edge of the down block, read my puller's head front side. I'm teaching it the advanced guy. We're downhill through our landmark. Oh, that backside linebacker felt the pull. He's trying to run over the top. Then that's when the ball goes inside the combination block and just replaces the gap that guy vacated. So to me, there's a couple different ways you coach it. You've got to be able to coach it and know who you're coaching, so to speak. And some guys can handle that second level, what I would call a 505 coaching. Some guys can't. And then I just let them do what they do. But that's my talk. I'll say this too on the gap scheme runs. I'll get this point across. Once again, guys may agree or disagree, but when you run a gap scheme run, just telling the back that it's an A to A run, A gap to A gap run, I think is doing a disservice. And the reason I think it's doing a disservice is, once again, let's just talk about one back power for argument's sake, and let's block it up versus a 4-2 box. So we've got a 3 technique to the tight end side. We've got a 1 technique on the back side. We've got 2 inside linebackers and 2 defensive ends over the weak tackle and the tight end. If I'm running this football play and we just tell the guy A gap to A gap, if I run downhill and go on the front side A gap, and we've got a combination block that's happening in the B gap with a tackle and a guard, the backside linebacker should run downhill and hit me unblocked in the A gap if the ball goes in the A gap. The backside A gap is covered because we've got a center blocking back on the nose who's occupying the backside A gap. So once again, to just say to a kid it's A gap, to me is misleading. The ball is going to start downhill through a landmark on the field, but the ball is ultimately going to end up outside the tackle in the C gap with the run. And so just the teaching method that you use and the communication that you use for backs is very, very important. And that's just one example of what I mean. I hear guys talk about it's A gap to A gap when I coach power. I just I said, okay, that's fine. I said, when we're talking about a blitz, okay, let me ask you this. We're talking about a blitz and the blitzer comes outside the tackle. Is that an A gap blitz? Oh no, he's in the C gap. I said, well, what about power when the ball ends up outside the tackle, even though it's over the alignment of the ball? Is that not the C gap still? So just different ways to look at gap scheme runs and the different things you can say to a kid in terms of your coaching to really get them in the right areas with the football.
I couldn't agree with you more. I think there's a lot of what we talk about in our coach speak that makes a lot of sense to us, but we're training guys who aren't necessarily coaches, and so we have to be very descriptive. And if the same thing as we look at, and you and I before we got going, we're talking about the outside zone a little bit, right? That play, big time distortion of the defense. Those gaps are moving, immediately based on what's happening on the offensive line, based on the threat of that back hitting the perimeter. The defense is starting to move. We always talk about, you hear coaches in clinics. Well, we're gonna bang it,
move
we're gonna bend
back.
it,
Yeah.
We're gonna bounce, all those different things. And when in reality, especially when you look at what they call as, we're going to bend it back, well, especially like on the outside zone, that thing truthfully isn't bending back. Now it may, physically look like it went behind the center, but if you follow that point on the field, and I used to do this when we were teaching our backs, is I would put a mark on the video and say, I want you to watch where this is. I'm going to keep it in that same place as I move through these frames. And that thing is actually outside of where their aim point was, even though it went behind the center. So it's not truly a cutback. And so if you teach it in terms of, you're going to cut that back, that means a little bit something to, especially an unseasoned back, right? And he's cutting back into guys who are coming right at them. So again, I think it's back to what you said, the language that we use.
Yeah, and here's the thing too. When you're starting to talk about zones, whether it's an outside zone, and really when you're talking about gap schemes, the ball is going to go in one of three areas. As simple as that sounds, and it's going to be based off the defensive movement or reaction. So if we're talking outside zone, the football, when you watch your film or watch anybody else's film, the football does one of three things. The football bounces around the defense because the defense lost contain or lost leverage. The ball, what I use the term, stays on the angle. So whatever landmark we told you to run at, you run at that landmark, and the outside edge of the defense stretched beyond that landmark, and the inside portion of the defense got cut off on that landmark, and you're able to run a straight line through the second level, or the ball cuts up like you were just about to talk about. It doesn't cut back on outside zone, it cuts up. It's 1 foot in the ground and it's a vertical cut. So when you start talking outside zone and watch your film, the ball does one of three things. It bounces, it stays on its angle, or it cuts up. Now take that same thought process and start talking about an inside zone. When you run an inside zone, the ball does one of three things. The ball is going to press through its landmark and stay on its landmark. And I really don't say it's staying on the angle because it's a different little pass, but the ball is going to work its way straight through its landmark through the defense and be in front of the front side linebacker. Or the ball is going to bend back and the ball is going to end up being in between the two linebackers because the front side linebacker is going to go fast, the backside linebacker is going to be slow, and the ball is going to split the defense. And then the third thing the ball is going to do is the ball is going to find its way all the way out the back door. It's like what I like to say, because you get both linebackers to fast flow, they overflow, and then the ball ends up bending back and gets out the back door. So once again, when you study your film, the ball is going to do one of three things when you're running an outside zone. It's going to do and end up in one of three places when you run an inside zone. It's going to end up in front of the play side linebacker. It's going to end up splitting the linebackers, or it's going to be behind the backside linebacker. And once again, just watch your film. And then once you understand why, the big key is understanding why the ball is going somewhere. And then you turn around and you coach it to your ball carrier. And it's the same thing, if you start talking gap scheme runs, the ball is going to end up in front of the combination block the majority of the time. Every once in a while, it's going to end up behind the combination block because that backside linebacker is going to see the pull and try to beat it over the top. And then once again, a small percentage of times, you get a combination block on a 3 technique, and that 3 technique is rooted out of the B gap. So he's supposed to be in the B gap, and a tackle shoved his ass all the way in the A gap. And now sometimes the ball ends up splitting the combination blocks. But when you watch your film or watch anybody's film on those blocking schemes, that's where the football goes. And then it's just turning around and training the running back to understand when this happens, this is where the ball goes, and put together your progression from there.
Coach, in shifting gears here a little bit, thinking about the work, when you were coaching the game, whether that was at the college level or in the NFL, got a lot of guys out there who are position coaches, some running back coaches, I'm sure, listening to this. Your role in helping with the game plan, right? And especially thinking of maybe our younger guys who are getting into the game, what things can they do to best help not only be looking for certain things in the game plan that's going to help, with the running game, but then being able to translate, here's the game plan, guys, when we're in our position room or when we're out on the field, so that there's that success on game day. What kind of role did you take as a coach?
Yeah, I think there's a lot that goes into that. Number one would be, based on what your offense is, you're gonna run your offensive system. So, once again, if we're talking lower level guys, they're gonna run their system because they're really not seeing film. If I'm a middle school coach or a youth coach, I don't have a week of seeing film on a team and I can game plan them, so to speak. But what I would say is your game day management of making sure you have a few answers based on defensive generated problems, if we're looking at it from an offensive perspective. So what do I mean by that? have the ability within your offense to have perimeter runs and interior runs and maybe one or two different blocking schemes. So if a defense is giving you hell inside, you have an answer to try to get the ball on the perimeter doing something. Or if you're trying to pass the ball, you can have and they're taking away all your boundary throws. Right at the lower level, there's two places on the field where the ball ends up finding itself. It ends up finding itself thrown to the boundary flat area, and thrown to the field. I'm going to call it hook area, but that hook area is going to also extend behind the line of scrimmage with bubble throws. I've watched enough youth football to see the ball thrown into the boundary on hitches, and seen the ball thrown either to hitches on by number 2 or to throw bubbles. And to me, you've got to be able to, if you're going to do that, you have to have an answer then when they take that away. So if you want to live on just throwing the ball into the boundary and throwing hitches because that's what your quarterback can do, the minute they play cloud into the boundary, now what's your answer? So my point is, having the ability to have answers within your system at the lower levels is really, really important, because you've got to manage that throughout the game. Now, as you get to the high school level and the collegiate level and the professional level, where you're scouting your opponent, you're seeing their film, you're understanding their tendencies, the checklist I would go through is, number one, what is the front they play? What's their number one front? So I got to know how we're attacking their number one front. We've got to be able to attack their run support system. So, are they a quarters team? Are they a middle of the field close team? What is their run support structure? And then what are their chaos calls? Are they a big movement team with their line? Are they a big blitz team? So understand the front, understand the run support structure, and then how do they cause chaos within their system in the run game? And then, to me, you put your plan together from there. Are their defensive ends and their defensive line coached as two gap guys, or are they penetrating up the field guys? On the edge, when we take our tackle and we inside release, whether it's zone away or whether it's gap scheme 2, how does the defensive end play? Are they a team that's going to be upfield with their defensive ends? Are they a team that's going to scrape real hard and try to spill everything? I think those things you need to know. How do their linebackers play just in general? How is the linebacker coach coaching their linebackers? Are they a downhill team and they're going to be able to take double teams off quickly because they're going to get downhill? Or are they a team that's going to kind of flow and it's going to allow us to stay on the double teams a little bit longer because their linebackers play at the second level and stay 4 to 5 yards? Those are some of the things that would be looked at to figure out, okay, now how can we attack this team? And then also, what is our answer when they take something away? So what can we get to next? And that's, to me, how you work through your game plan. Think of your game plan. Have a few plays put into your game plan that could be construed as halftime adjustments. And when I say that, I mean, don't wait until you get into the game and they've taken something away, and then you go in the locker room at halftime and then you come up with the solution. To me, that's part of the work week, is putting plan in place and then putting your contingencies also in place so you can practice them. And those are like your halftime adjustments that you already have built into the system so you can practice them. I think that's important as well. So I think there's two trains of thoughts based on what level I'm coaching at or what type of preparation I'm able to get through the week. But the answer is, have enough offense where if the defense is able to take away something, you can get to something else. Not just have an offense constructed where you don't have answers for they played a hard corner into the boundary, or you don't have an answer for they're gonna pressure us from the field and bring outside linebacker pressure the whole game, and we really don't have an answer for that. Or hey, they got into a goal line defense, and they're going to play with 2 A-gap tackles, and they're going to put their ends in the B-gap, and they're going to take away the middle run game, and now we don't have an answer to get to something. We're a big, veer team, or we're a big zone team, and they said, screw it, we're going to kind of put a whole bunch of bodies in there. Now what do we get to? So it's just coming up with answers, and then, understanding what the defense is trying to do to you. And I believe having your contingencies throughout the week. Don't wait till halftime to make all your adjustments.
Coach, in finishing things up today, when you look at all the things you do as a coach, on or off the field, what was the one thing that you do as a coach that really gives your guys the winning edge?
Wow. I think having your guys prepared, and when you talk about having the winning edge, being efficient in what you do with the guys so you can cover a lot of different things is important. Being able to show guys what's important. There's a lot of things we can discuss and talk about, and a lot of film we can show. But doing the prep work to be efficient in what you're showing them, how you're communicating with them, I think that helps give you a winning edge. I think it's all in your preparation. The winning edge happens Monday through Thursday if you're a high school coach, and Tuesday through Friday, or Friday if you're a college coach, and it happens Wednesday through Saturday if you're a pro coach. So that's where you develop the winning edge for your players. And then when they go out there on Sunday or Saturday or Friday night, they do. So to me, I think your preparation throughout the course of the week, your process that you put in place, that's where the winning edge is developed.
Coach, you're doing a lot of great stuff. If you would please share your information where guys can find your 3rd and 3 and all the things that you're doing.
Okay. Well, the website, like you mentioned, is thirdand3.com. And there you can find the information for our upcoming clinics that we have. And there's also a large video library where a guy can come and can sort a position and look at stuff. And we try to do a lot of relevant stuff. The other thing that's a little bit unique, I'll plug this. Another thing that's a little bit unique about what we do with our clinics and then what you see on the video is they're interactive. And we usually try to have both sides of the ball represented on talks. And that way you get a good banter back and forth about things. So we might have a discussion on wide receivers, route concepts, but we have some defensive back coaches on the call as well. And then I'm a wide receiver coach. I'm listening to this presentation, but I'm also learning from how a defense sees what we're doing. And I think that's important, the back and forth between both sides of the ball. So thirdand3.com, a lot of information there. There's a 3rd and 3 Twitter handle. My individual Twitter handle is @CoachWalk33. And then we're on Facebook at 3rd and 3 Football as well. So a lot of different ways you can find out what we're doing in the social media world.
Coach, I really appreciate you taking the time. And coaches, I will share his link to his CoachTube course in our show notes as well. But Coach, keep up the great work, and would certainly love to have you back on the podcast again.
Okay, I appreciate it. This was great, and would love to come back and share some more.
Thank you again for listening to the Coaching Coordinator Podcast. Please, if you are enjoying the podcast, head over to iTunes or Spotify and click 5-star for a rate. If you have a minute, write a review. It really helps the podcast. Check out our new home for the Coaching Coordinator Podcast. That's at coachandcoordinator.com. And follow me on Twitter @Coach K. Grabowski.